Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Both Sides podcast. This is episode 2 for the day up in the Goldie. Today we've got a guy by the name of Hanan Cawley. Thank you for coming on. Mate, I first saw you a couple of years ago when you spoke at AREC, and you had a phenomenal story. You've pretty much built this literally on your own. You've now stepped out on your own completely too. So how about we give all the rest of the listeners that didn't get the opportunity to see you on stage at AREC and run them through what your story's been like, because you didn't start here. You weren't in the Gold Coast. Let's bring it right back and let all the listeners know where you actually started.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, mate. And thanks for having me, boys. Really appreciate it. Happy to be here. So where did it start? It probably started when I was 15, to be honest with you. I went way off the rails when I was like young, like 14, 15, started smoking a lot of weed and just, anyway, it was a downhill spiral. I ended up commercial fishing from 15 to 20.
Out of school at 15?
Out of school, 15 and a half, 16.
And where were you at the time?
Tauranga, New Zealand, east coast of the North Island. Yeah, so 2 hours south of Auckland. Anyway, my best mate at the time, his dad was a commercial fisherman. He went commercial fishing. I sort of jumped in. It was great money, super hard work, and it taught me, I suppose, how much I could do, in the sense that, like, I think most people don't understand their actual capacity and how much they've got in the tank when they're tired. And when you're living and working on a commercial fishing boat for 1 week up to 3 months in some instances, and you're working every day and there's no room for a sick day, you don't get sick, right?
Yeah.
You don't get tired. You have to fucking show up. So I think having that background from 15 to 20 was really, really good. Although I was way off the rails and doing a whole lot of shit I should have never done, it taught me how much capacity I had and how much I could do when I thought that I didn't have anything left. Right, so then at 20, I decided that I needed to get my life on track. I left New Zealand, moved to a place called Toowoomba, obviously inland from Brisbane. It's about 2 hours from where we are here on the Gold Coast at the moment. Got a job in real estate at 21. Started at just a little boutique agency, lasted 3 months as a prospector. Then went across to the Harcourts franchise in Toowoomba, worked for a guy by the name of Mark Abra, who's still a very, very close friend of mine. He was the best mentor I could have had at the time. And the business at the time was only selling rural property. It was a landmark Harcourts franchise, and then him and I sort of decided we should dual brand and do Harcourts and landmark Harcourts. So my job was really to try and rebuild the residential business, which actually had no profile in town. It was just an agribusiness company. So from 21 through till 24, I did that, and that was like 7 days a week. 3 months before I left, we were doing 25 to 30 open homes a weekend. It was myself, Mark, a PA and a prospector. Became the number one agent out there. Worked super, super hard, didn't really have any holidays. And what I like to say is I kind of earned my stripes out there. And then it got to the point where I had always wanted to be a partner in that business. But when that opportunity presented itself, I looked at it and I was like, fuck, if I take this, I'm stuck here. Right? So at the start, I think it was January, February 2020, the partnership opportunity got presented. I had a really good think about it, and I was like, this actually isn't what I want. So I walked away from it. We had 95 listings on the market at the time. I gave them to Mark. He gave me 20% of anything that sold, and I moved down to the Gold Coast and started fresh again. So when I moved here, I think that would have been about June by the time that happened. It took me about 3 months to make the decision.
How old are you at that time?
24.
Why? Why all the big changes?
Well, I mean, I started from nothing once, right? I went from New Zealand, didn't know anyone, went to Toowoomba.
Catching shark to real estate.
Yeah, literally. Very, very similar in a lot of ways. I sort of worked out if from zero, like literally zero, no personal development, no foundational skills. I'd never worked in an office. I couldn't tie a tire, right? In 3 to 4 years, if I could have built that in Toowoomba, admittedly not a very competitive marketplace, what could I do in the next 3 or 4 with now a lot more foundation, a lot more confidence, a skill set? I'd sharpen the axe, right? So when the partnership opportunity got presented, I thought about it long and hard, and I was like, I've got a long time in this industry. I don't want it to end here, right? And obviously the big goal for me was always to sell prestige properties, and we're better than the Gold Coast, right? Admittedly, we don't have the volume of the likes of Sydney and Melbourne, but the lifestyle here is insane. I mean, it ticks a lot of boxes, and a lot of Kiwis end up here, funnily enough. Yeah. So I think it was really just like, what was the next logical step, and which marketplace is going to facilitate my dreams, right? Like, I love boating, I love the ocean, I love diving, fishing, all that sort of stuff, and it was just tick, 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 tick. So moved here, started COVID, worked for Dane Atherton at Harcourts Coastal. He was a great leader. Learned quite a lot from him as well. Did 3 years there. In the last quarter, before I left Harcourts, I was the number one agent for Harcourts Australia, number one individual agent to clarify, and that was for the quarter previous. So that was 3 years, cold start, knew no one, pretty much started from zero again. And then when that happened, I mean, there were a few things that happened outside of that as well. I sort of looked around and it's like, shit, okay, well, last 4 years I went zero to, number one in Toowoomba. Now I've done this here. What's the next logical step? I should probably open a business. Admittedly, a lot harder than most people think. But for me, that was kind of, the natural progression of where I was heading. And I've always been passionate about, coaching and speaking and training and personal development. So for me to be able to have my own organisation to probably instill what I believe and what I know was the next logical step.
So, if I remember correctly, did you do $1 million or very close to $1 million in your first year or two?
Yes.
Yeah. So, how do you think you were able to do that with absolutely zero brand equity, zero contacts, zero anything at all, and some agent can be here for 20 years and do only half the numbers? Why does that happen?
I think there's a few things. I think number one, you have to really want it, right? I had a really good mentor at the time, and I think mentorship's very important. We'll talk about that separately. But my main goal was to earn $1 million personally, not GCI personally, to earn $1 million. Because coming from New Zealand, working my whole life on a fishing boat, making 80 grand a year, the idea of $1 million net income was like, holy fuck! If I could do that, I'd feel like I've actually made it. So I had that goal super clear, right? And I was writing it down every morning, and I was looking at it, and I was talking about it. So I think that's number one, you've got to know where you're going. Number two, I was extremely disciplined, right? So I was up early every morning, regardless, the amount of sleep that I got. I was in the gym, I would meditate, I'd write my goals down, I'd get super clear, I'd get my mind and my body and my spirit all moving in the same direction, and then I'd start my day. So for me, the recipe, and I still use it today, it's so simple. Wake up early.
What time?
Between 4:30 and 5:30, depending on how much sleep I've had the night before. Ideally, I try to get to the 5 o'clock gym class, because then I'm done by 6, go for a beach walk, have a swim, get in the office by 8. So the recipe's super simple, right? And I think if more people did this, just to distill it down, more people ended up where they want to go. Wake up early, meditate, get this in track, right? Write my goals down or review them, get really, really clear about what they are. Train, get your body moving, get your blood pumping. Get home, go to work hard. If you literally just do those 4 things and you stack them together over a year, you'll be astounded where you end up. The problem is, as agents, we have a couple of wins, right? And the old saying is it's hard to get out of bed wearing silk pajamas when you've got, a lot of money sitting in the bank, as a lot of us think, when you have 1 or 2 deals, you might have 100 grand in the bank, you think that's a lot of money until you start hanging out with people who have a lot more money. It's very hard to muster the motivation to keep going. So I think one of the reasons why I did so well in my first year was because I had to. Right, my rent tripled when I moved down here. Living expenses went up. I didn't want to be a hermit and sit inside, and I literally had no passive income. So I didn't really have a choice. I had to hustle. I had to get up. I had to go for it. And then through that process, it's been really interesting to have to try and find different motivations. Right, because the financial motivation only gets you so far. It's like running away from the fear of running out of money, and then once that's far enough in the distance, it's like, okay, what actually motivates me now? What am I running towards?
What are you running towards?
Freedom. My main goal is to have my passive income far exceed my earned income, so I can make some very different decisions.
Why?
Why? I feel like if I was making passively what I really would like to be making passively, which isn't that far away, I would probably do more in the coaching and training and speaking space. And I've always, and that was kind of why I opened the office, right? Is to open the office to coach, train, speak my agents and help them become successful, because I've done it in 2 different marketplaces now with a new brand again, right? I feel like I kind of know how to do it, and I'd love to show people how to do that.
Love that.
Sounds like your passion now is really about building and speaking rather than the real estate transaction.
Yes and no. I love a deal. I absolutely love doing deals. I feel like the natural progression for me over the next few years, though, is into more of a leadership position. Yeah.
Yep. In terms of when you're teaching these young guys, because one of the issues I have, and I'll mentor a lot of the guys in our office as well, is their hunger or discipline to actually sit there and make the calls. So what you see, there'll be the sales floor, there'll be 20 guys there, and there will always be water cooler chat. No matter how much you tell the guys, hey, you're not here to make friends, you're here to make money. They always get stuck in that rhythm of talking. How do you manage that, and how would you teach young guys to actually stay disciplined?
It's a good question, and like intrinsically, I feel like you kind of want it or you don't, right? Like everyone's going to succeed to their own expectation. Like you're never going to move past your highest aspiration for yourself. And I think a lot of these young guys are happy with $100 grand a year, right? They are happy with 3 or 4 or 5 deals as an associate, right? And if they don't want it, you can't change that for them. So I think you kind of have to accept people where they're at. But then when you see the guys like, I would have been at 21, or I'm sure you guys would have been when you first got into the industry, you harness that, right? And you really push them to be as good as they possibly can be. So, I don't know, like I can remember when I was 21, 22 and I was out, at Harcourts in Toowoomba, I didn't want anyone to talk to me. I wouldn't even answer my phone if my friends called me. I was so focused. But I also think there's a part of that was like, I was there by myself. I didn't have a plan B. If I failed, I kind of died. I would have starved, right? And a lot of these guys are living at home, right? They, they have very supportive families, and they don't have to. Which I think that's pretty key, right? When you have to, you will. When you back yourself in against a wall, you will succeed inevitably.
Yeah, very different story when you're coming from that.
Yeah.
When you were building this career in the Gold Coast, were you driven, or were you being kept up at night by not wanting to fail? Was there there had to be? So I know when I was coming up, there was always a burning desire of why.
Yep.
What was the reason that kept you up at night?
On the Gold Coast?
Yeah.
I know that there was, so I caused a bit of a ruckus in Toowoomba, right? The older agents there didn't like me. Like I was going hard on expired listings, and like I would get calls from them like all, abusing me, saying we don't do expireds here. And for me it was like, well, I'm not from here, so I'm doing expireds.
Yeah.
So when I left, I knew, because I heard it through the grapevine, it was all like, oh, he's not going to make it on the Gold Coast. And like there were all these comments from these agents, and even agents inside the Harcourts office who I'm good friends with now and don't even know that I know that they said this to other people, about, oh, he doesn't know what he's in for, he's not going to make it here. So I think a lot of the criticism and the negativity and the expectations of other people for you to fail, I think that really drove me, because I don't want to be seen as a failure. I want to be seen as a success, and I'd never want to be remembered as the guy that tried and failed. And I think, for opening the business now as well, it's kind of a similar motivation. As hard as it may be, it's like, well, I'm not going to quit, because I'm not going to give you guys the liberty of going, Hanan didn't make it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Was yours pretty similar?
Yeah, but it was very similar. How do you handle the stress on those days? Because there's going to be days where there is a ton of pressure and you have a shit day or shit morning. How do you handle that stress? Especially being in the position you're in and you're that actual business owner. The buck stops with you.
I think there's a certain amount of faith you have to have, right? Without getting too woo-woo here. I think there's a certain amount of faith that you have to have that everything's going to work out, in order to try and mitigate the stress and the pressure. I believe that if I wake up early, I meditate, I train, I'm very clear with my goals, I show up to work, I work hard, I will inevitably win. I don't think that there's an option for me to fail. So as long as I follow the process and I don't get distracted and I don't go off track, which we all do time to time, I know it'll absolutely be fine. But I don't know, I've been backed into enough corners in my life. I've been in some really bad situations, before I came to Australia and after I've been in Australia. And I just think once you've been through it a few times, there's kind of like this level of faith and certainty and confidence that you have in yourself that it's like, no matter how bad it gets, I will make it work and it will be okay. So I think getting up early and doing, the meditation definitely helps with that. I think maintaining a really fit, strong, healthy body and a fit, strong, healthy mind is very, very important. And then if you just do the basics every day, it'll be sweet.
Do you I have to ask, so you've moved across from New Zealand to Australia with no family, no nothing. Do you have much family support?
When you say family support, that could mean different things. Do you mean love? Or do you mean financially?
I'd say both.
I've never had any financial family support, ever. Like, it's all been off my own bat. Although, if I asked for it, it'd probably be there. My family aren't super successful, but, you know, if it worst came to worst and I couldn't feed myself, I'm sure there'd be support there. Love, heaps of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a good relationship with both my mum and my dad, so I think that's really important as well.
Sweet. Okay. So that leads me to my next question. In terms of, look, you've obviously gone through, you know, a breakup and what have you, of some sorts in your personal life. You're here with no family. Yes, you might have, you know, support overseas, but here you've had no family and you've gone through something that has affected your personal life. I know I've gone through something similar recently. How have you been able to navigate that, especially with your emotions and running a business at the same time?
Great question. It was fucking daunting when it first happened, because my sister lived here for a little bit, and the last breakup I went through, my sister lived in the same building, and I just went upstairs and she was cooking me dinner and everything was okay, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, my most recent one, it was really daunting. Like, I definitely had times where I thought that the show wasn't going to go on anymore. Like, that's not me being dark, that's me going, am I actually going to be able to show up every day and perform to the level I need to meet the expenses of the repayments of my properties and my investment properties, of my expensive lifestyle, of the shit that I want to do, of the business, of this, like, everything, right? So there was a lot of doubt and shit that crept in. Admittedly, I went off the rails for a little bit, which I think a lot of guys do after a breakup, and probably a lot of girls do as well. But yeah, I don't know, man, like, this sort of just comes to a point where it's like, if you really want better for yourself, you make it work regardless. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it wasn't easy, and I don't think it ever is easy. Like, the loss of love is probably one of the most difficult things we can go through, right? Especially when you're trying to start a business as well. Like, in the 3 weeks that you know, that my ex-partner and I broke up, I launched the business, I bought a new apartment, and she moved out. And I'm sitting on the couch, I'm like, oh, I'm so fucked. Like, it's
That's
done.
full on.
And it was going through my head, and I was like, okay, do I resell the apartment? Do I not do the business? Do I go back to Harcourts? And I was sort of weighing it all up. And I just looked at myself in the mirror and I shook myself. I was like, no, you fucking got this. Like, you've been in some much worse situations. You'll be absolutely fine. And then when that, you know, switch flicked, game on.
Yeah. So in terms of now, like, you've now, how long into the business?
8 months.
8 months. What are the next steps and where do you see you taking this company now?
Cool, awesome, great question. So I haven't put any energy or attention into recruitment at all. I haven't even looked at it. I've probably made 3 phone calls to people that I knew just to see whether or not, you know, I just dipped my toe in the water, but would you know, come across? Next year there'll be a focus on that. I would like to start bringing in other agents, getting a decent sized office space that I can recruit a few people into. I don't see myself going into property management yet, but it will happen. I think in a perfect world, I'd probably find someone to partner with to do that, because I don't know property management. I'd rather find someone that knows how to do it and let them do what they're good at. So really just growing the business locally. And then, I mean, I've got some huge goals for it in terms of expansion and scale. But I understand that it also starts with me being the best possible agent I can be, and then as a consequence of that, people will want to come and work for me, and then I'll make them successful, and then it will be quite magnetic from there. So next year, I'd like to recruit somewhere between 5 and 10 agents. Would be the idea. Commission only. I don't want to pay people wages at all. Like, I want to show agents that are writing like 150, 200 GCI, how if they change a few simple things in their life, they'll get to $1 million straight away, which is so simple, right? Like, you guys would know people that are doing 1, 2, 300 GCI. It's like, if you just stop doing that, started doing that, change this, stop hanging out with that person, added this, like, that flourish.
Yeah. What are the things from the work, the function of work, what are the things that you've changed up, or that you would recommend people changing, that you see are the common setbacks? So we've got the routine: get up early, meditate, gym, Don't
do drugs.
And don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs. Don't drink. So my best year in real estate wasn't actually last year. It was the year before, when I was 27 now, 25. Right. My first 18 months on the Gold Coast was my biggest year in real estate. I didn't drink for 12 months.
Wow.
And there's a message now. I'm going to do that again next year. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to go full monk mode next year. January through to December, not a drop of alcohol, no drugs, no nothing. I'm just going to go completely laser focused, because if I reflect back, like that was me like with a 3-month run up on the Gold Coast, then the following 12 months I didn't drink. That was my best ever year, right? I didn't drink, and I was super disciplined, and I was super focused. So I think if you really want to progress yourself, don't drink, don't do drugs, get rid of the wrong friends. That's so important, right? Like, I'm quite lucky in the sense that I'm thousands of kilometers away from where I grew up, right? So all of my dickhead mates that I still love to pieces, that are absolutely no good for me, right, have no access to me, right? And it might be a very different story if I lived in New Zealand. So I think getting rid of the people that, I mean, unfortunately, and this sounds really bad, that you grew up with, that might be your best friends, are probably the biggest reason you're not succeeding. Right? And most people don't want to look at it that way. So getting rid of the wrong people and adding the right people, finding a mentor, and personal development.
Go deeper on that.
On what?
On mentorship and personal development.
Mentorship. Okay, so mentorship. I mean, there's so many different categories here when it comes to mentorship, but I think most agents need to learn how to get this thing to work properly. Most agents are really scarce. They don't have abundant mindsets. They don't understand success principles. They don't really have, like, the ones that win have high EQ, right? I think you're naturally born with a higher EQ. Some people are, some people aren't. I think you can also develop it. And I think with the right mentor and leadership, you'll learn what sort of stuff you need to start absorbing to try and up your ability to read the play, to simplify it. So the best mentor I ever had was a guy called David, and he really just put me on the tracks of personal development, like positive thinking, law of attraction, starting to understand, what did I need to begin to think to attract the circumstances into my life that I wanted to be able to create the life that I needed. Right, so I think mentorship is super important. Someone that can sort of slap you around a bit and make sure that you are on track and you are thinking the right way. Someone that has the authority to be ruthlessly honest with you when you are off track, because generally your mates won't do that. What was the other thing? There was one other thing you wanted to
Personal development and mentorship.
go hand in hand. The right mentor will lead you to the personal development that you need to do. Right, but I think Audible, for example. I mean, you get an Audible subscription for $14 a month. You've got every single audio book in the world, right? You can learn from the people that have been the most successful in whatever craft they have. It's so simple. It's so simple, but the things that are easy not to do right are so easy not to do. So the things that are easy to do are so easy not to do as well, and that's why most people don't do it. Like, it's as simple as listening to a podcast for 30 minutes in the morning between Tom Panos and an agent, or Josh Fegan and an agent, whilst you're exercising, to get your brain moving in the right direction, to go out and win in the marketplace. But most people listen to music or scroll on Facebook. Right, it's just the little differences.
I hear a lot of, you just touched on it where, you said it matters who your friends are, right? Cut out the dickheads. Now, you always hear the same thing. You're the median of the 5 people we hang around the most. Now, I've heard it all my life, and I go, yep, I need to have better friends. But what actually constitutes a good friendship? How do you actually structure your friendship so people understand, hey, this is a good friend, or this is someone I should probably cut out?
Super simple, right? Are these people a reflection of my future or of my past? That's it. Right? Do these people represent the direction I want to be heading in, or are they a representation of the person I used to be? Right? It's one or the other.
That's awesome.
Super simple. Most people don't want to cut off the people that they love, though. And you don't have to cut them off, right? Just distance yourself and add the right ones.
Love it. You've come into this marketplace and you've come out, and you're not going into just the cheap stock. You've come in straight away and you're selling luxury homes. How are you able to beat agents that are established, especially in the luxury sector?
Yep, great question. It's not easy, and you get a lot more no's than you do yeses at the start. I think the key thing is the ability to close on the spot.
Close on the spot?
Close on the spot, yeah. So crazily enough, a lot of agents will go to a listing presentation and send a proposal that afternoon and then hope for a call back, or they'll follow up the next day, whatever it might be. as a 21-year-old kid in Toowoomba with no relationships, my only option was to get the business on the spot, because if they researched me and worked out that I'd sold nothing and I'd been there for 3 days, I wasn't getting the business, right? So I learned how to close from a very young age, and I have, sharpened that skill.
I'm going to write that down.
Time and time again. The ability to close, so important, right? And most agents don't talk about that. No. If you're really, really good, if you're the big dog, you're the attraction agent in the area, you don't really need to close. People close themselves for you. They call you that, hey, Hanan, I'm ready to go. Can you come over? We want to do an auction. It's like, oh, great, thanks. It takes 15 years to get there in most instances. So my ability to close on the spot and put deals together and just do whatever needs to be done. That doesn't mean drop my pants on fee and pay for marketing, which is what a lot of agents will do, but just have a conversation and not quit in the negotiation with someone whilst you're trying to get their business there and then, because most people will close on the spot. You've just missed things. The only reason people won't say yes to you whilst you're sitting in front of them is because you haven't answered all of their questions, right? So I've developed a listing presentation that before they ask me any questions, I've answered all their fucking questions. Right? So by the time we get to the end of it, they're like, he's answered everything. He's gone through the whole process. I know what to expect. I asked for the business. It's like, sure. And really the only thing then is commission. Yeah. Right? So I think learning to close is very important, and I think most agents don't put enough emphasis on that. There's something else I'll add to that, which is your ability to sit through a seller or a buyer, but generally a seller's emotional reaction to you trying to close them and then continue to persist in the close will make all the difference. Like most people will get it, no, I'm not doing it, and then someone will jump or someone will get upset or the wife's crying, she doesn't want to sell. Most agents will just let up. And I'm not saying be like a shark and like at all costs get it done, but your ability to sit through your customers' emotional reactions and objections whilst you're trying to close them and continue to persist in the close will make the difference as to whether you get it or not. Most people get the emotional reaction, they back off, they get scared, right? It's a part of the close. It's how it works. And funnily enough, if you persist through that and you sign someone up, and I'm sure you guys have had this before, right? They love you for it. They're like, holy fuck, he's good.
They want a salesperson.
100%. They respect it. And especially at the upper end of the market, they want a professional. They want someone that they can slap around, that sits there, that just keeps going forward, right? Because they know on the other end, when you're negotiating with a buyer, you're going to do the same thing for them.
Yeah.
How did you build, what was your prospecting methodology to get in the doors to these types of properties?
So when I first moved here, it was expired listings, right? So I worked for Harcourt's Coastal at the time. The admin girls were very supportive there. I had letters go out to expired listings. Prior to me even getting here, I think I said this story on the stage at AREC. I was literally driving this rented removalist truck down to the Gold Coast from Toowoomba. I was on the highway and my phone rang like 4 times from people that had got these letters that I'd sent them, like, hey, like, who are you? You're in Toowoomba. I was like, no, I've just moved here. I'm here. I booked appointments for like the following 3-4 days before my house was even unpacked. So first it was expireds. My focus is prestige property, specifically luxury waterfront. That's what I love to do because it's all sort of within 5 minutes of my home. Once I had one, I called the whole suburb. Like literally cold called the whole suburb. So Broadbeach Waters, for example, has about 5,000 homes in it. So I went through, RP data, white page, all the numbers I possibly could, and called every single person in that suburb and told them about my listing. And even if I got like, fuck off, don't call me again, not interested, I set follow-ups to speak to those people again and let them know when it's sold, or whatever buyers we had left over or whatever it might be, and then just grew organically from there.
Even the fuck off people.
100%. They forget you. I say that to everyone. Think about that, right? If someone's going to pick up, I just sent a fuck off in their hand. How many times have they had that phone call, right? You are no different to anyone else. Call them back in 3 months, treat it like a cold call again.
It's true. So true. We've got a viewer question here.
Go.
What things does Hanan do on a daily basis to tame the beast, i.e. get greater control of the mind?
I think it starts the night before, right? So like the night before, I put my phone on flight mode at 7:30. My phone goes on flight mode. I don't touch it unless I'm listening to like a guided meditation or something. 9 times out of 10, 7:30 flight mode, phone's away, gone, right? Then I'll get into bed.
What time?
8. 7:30 to 8, depending on what time I woke up that morning and how tired I'm feeling. I don't have specific go to bed and wake up times. I don't wake up to an alarm. I just let my body get the amount of rest that it needs. But the reason I say it starts the night before the phone goes away, that helps me get a better sleep, right? Because if you're wired and you're on your phone in your bed, which is what most people do, and they complain that they can't fucking sleep properly, right? Wonder why, right? You've been taking in a whole lot of information, you're stimulated, of course you can't sleep properly. Sorry, mate.
No,
so I get rid of the phone, shower, wind down, bed. I have some supplements like say magnesium and stuff to help me sleep better. Read for 15 to 20 minutes, minimum of 10 pages, what I try to do, because I find it just slows my mind down. Go to sleep, wake up naturally. When I wake up, hydrate, a litre of water every morning, filtered water, I don't drink tap water. I'm a little bit left field when it comes to that sort of stuff. Drink a litre of water, meditate 5 to 30 minutes, depending what time I've woken up and what gym class I'm planning into, but mandatory that I meditate, just to really get everything on track, right? Because you can wake up a bit scrambled sometimes, and I find first thing in the morning, just sitting yourself down and getting yourself centered is very, very, very helpful. Then gym, I go to circuit training. It's not CrossFit, it's not normal circuit training, it's a gym called Never Quit, so it's really hard, heavy weights, kind of Olympic lifting and some of it, which I really like because it pushes me. Either train 5 to 6 or 6 till 7. Home, generally go for a bit of a beach walk, so live on the beach, and then go for a swim. Up, shower, change, work. So the basics is go to bed early, wake up early, meditate, train, then work hard. Yeah. And if you just do those couple of things, you get your mind and your body all on track, right? And you get to work and you've already trained, your blood's pumping, right? So you're focused, your endorphins are high, you'll speak better to people on the phone, you'll be more driven. Generally I fast as well, I'll fast until 10 to 12 o'clock.
Wow.
Just have 1 or 2 black
Do you
coffees.
drink coffee? Yeah.
Yeah, 1 or 2 black coffees, I'm I'm on. You can't stop me. So yeah, I think it's just doing the basics right. They're getting enough sleep, they're drinking the water, moving your body. Not many people are meditating. I think more people should be. I think it's very helpful, especially as agents. We've got so many things going on. Yeah.
Have you had this routine for a while, or has this only come into place since you've been at Momentum?
No. I developed this routine probably. I was definitely doing it when I first moved here, because I can remember so clearly getting up after 4 or 5 hours of sleep and laying on my lounge room floor listening to a guided gratitude meditation and falling asleep going through it, and then I'd get up and I was fuck, I'd go to the gym. So I think probably for 4 years I've been doing it. Yeah. Ever since I've been doing over 7 figures in fees, I've been doing it.
What's more powerful, waking up naturally or being strict on the wake up?
I actually think being strict on the wake up. I experiment with it all the time. I find if I'm strict with the wake up, I'm a lot more structured, because it's if I wake up at 4:15, then I've got 15 minutes to meditate, then I've got 20 minutes to get to the gym, and da. So I find being firm probably helps me get more done, but depending on my energy levels and how close to burnout I'm feeling, I'll sort of taper on and off, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Something else that's really important, I think agents don't have enough holidays.
How often do you holiday?
Every 3 months.
Every 3 months?
Every
for a
3
week?
months. 1 to 2.
1 to 2.
Yeah, and do it properly. If you're going to bust your ass and cop shit from clients and buyers and work Saturdays and Sundays and, put yourself through a monotonous routine Monday to Sunday that's probably not very enjoyable in most instances, go and enjoy yourself. So for me, it's really 10 to 11 weeks on, 1 to 2 weeks off. Yeah. And if you do that, you'll you'll come back, your energy will be super high, and then by the time you get to the end of that, you'll be getting pretty close to burnout. If you've been going hard the whole time, you go on holiday and you come back, and then it's cyclical, right? And then you never actually burn out, and you never end up at zero energy, and hopefully for more than half of that time, you're at full pace.
Love it. Another viewer question. If you could go back 10 years and change one thing, what would it be and why?
I would have told myself to stop doing drugs, right? I would have told myself to...
Is weed that harmful though? Because you hear a lot of people...
It was everything, yeah.
Mate, anyone who says is weed just harmful?
Yeah. I was just trying to make it sound good at the start of the podcast. I was off the rails in every sense that you could possibly imagine from 15, 16. So
why do you think that is?
I had a lot of trauma that I was processing. Mum and dad had a pretty ugly divorce. I was in the middle of that, not at their fault, but obviously being like 14, 15, going through that was pretty traumatic for me. There are a few other things that happened as well, but I think the only reason people have these addictions is it's usually a way to band-aid their trauma that they haven't worked through. And I'm completely aware of that, right? Like my ex and I broke up, I went off the rails for a few months. Like I know how it works. I've been there enough times. So, to go back and get back on track, I would have told myself to stop doing drugs. I would have told myself to start doing personal development more early, like either getting a psychologist or something like that to try and help me work out all the shit that was going on in my head. And I would have moved to Australia sooner. I reckon if I moved to Australia at, 17, 18, I would be 2 or 3 years ahead of where I am now.
How old are you now?
27.
20.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And I'm super excited about that, right? Because I've got such a long runway, which is really concerning for all my competitors as well, right? Because most of the guys I'm competing with are in their twilight years.
Yeah.
That's the reality. And I've got like 30 years.
What do you think the hardest challenge is when you're going up against these big, not saying like relationship based, but what do you think the hardest thing is when you're coming up against these big hitters and these big appointments?
Like, what's the biggest objection?
Yeah.
Probably track record.
Track record.
Yeah.
How do you overcome that?
Would generally have to be some sort of compromise, unfortunately. I think, I don't know. It's interesting, right? Like, it's different for everyone. Some sellers want to give the young, hungry guy a crack because they were the young, hungry guy at one point and they want to see you succeed, right? And I've got a lot of those who are now my raving fans who I get all my referrals from, which is awesome. Sometimes you have to go in and, use certain pieces of dialogue, like, if John Smith's got 16 listings in the area and a buyer comes through your property, he's selling them something, but it might not be yours, right? If I've got yours and it's my only listing in the area or my only listing above $5 million, I don't have any option but to sell them your property. So I'm not going to shop these buyers around. I'm going to be working exclusively for you and your listing to get this done. And I'll work harder because it means more to me, right? So I think you've got to have certain pieces of dialogue that help you navigate around that. But I think also, believing that you're capable, having high enough confidence to try and close these guys as well, because I think a lot of young guys going into prestige listing presentations, the vendor gives them a bit of a slap around, they're like, fuck, I'm out, and they bail. I think dialogue, but I think also having conducive beliefs, like these guys want to see a young guy succeed. Some people will support me, all that sort of stuff will probably help you be more confident and then, have a red hot crack at getting it.
My last question for you, man.
Go for it.
Which I'd love to get your perspective on, given the fact you've moved quite a few times, is if you were considering introducing a buyer's agency to Queensland, how would you go about doing that?
If I was to introduce a buyer's agency to Queensland, this is probably not what most people would say, but I reckon it would be wise to partner with someone who is already running a business in the space that you're trying to crack into. Like, that would make sense to me. And I know the objection's going to be, is there a conflict of interest between, the buyers and the sellers and all that sort of stuff? Well, you just have to have very clear lines where you work separately. But I think, if you could partner with someone that has an established sales business that's going to be able to give you plenty of referrals, that's probably going to be a pretty good start. And that may not work long term and you might choose to exit that arrangement. But I think if it was me and I was doing it, that's what I would do.
Sweet. My last question, in terms of you're 27, there's going to be a lot of young guys around our age that are looking at you going, geez, like he's already his own standalone, he's far ahead of me. They're going to try push really hard to become their own agent really quick. How long do you think is a good amount of time to stay under somebody to learn before you go off on your own? I know everyone's going to be different, but
everyone's different and people learn at different rates. And I think people have different upbringings, right? Therefore, they're probably more ready than some. Generally, probably 3 years.
3 years.
Under a gun. Like 3 years working under a B or a C grade agent isn't going to prepare you, right? But if you can go and work under a market leader for 2 or 3 years, and have them come to all your listing appointments and probably run them for you, and you just sit there and watch and sponge it all up, I think 2 to 3 years is plenty of time.
Legendary. Mate, thank you. You've been a
welcome.
beast. Thank you.
Thanks, boys.